Good morning again, everybody. If I didn't get to shake your hand, sorry. Not personal, but it's good to see you all. Good to have everyone here together. Good to have a place to worship out of the cold. Imagine having to meet outside today. It'd be a rough day. So thank the Lord for a building that's warm. Thankful to have you all here today. If you would, turn to the book of Hosea, chapter 3. We'll continue on our study as long as the Lord allows and leads. But in Hosea chapter 3, I know we hit on, talked a lot about verse 1 last week, but we'll read the whole chapter again and just see where the Lord allows. Kind of like Brother Austin mentioned, I guess you kind of put it verbally, but you do kind of feel when the Lord just says, all right, that's enough. And I feel like we'll kind of get to a point as long as the Lord allows to get there, but we'll see what he does, what he has in store. But Hosea chapter 3, verse 1, Then said the Lord unto me, that me being Hosea, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for a homer of barley, and half a homer of barley. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man, so will I also be for thee. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, without a sacrifice, and without an image, without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return, and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Brother Andy, will you lead us in a word of prayer, please? Amen. So we left off last week in verse 1 of chapter 3. And in verse 1 we see again the Lord is telling Hosea to go and love a woman, the same woman that is mentioned in chapter 1. This is not a new woman. He's not polygamy here. But in chapter 1 where he's told that he's going to have a wife of an adulteress, this is that same woman. But you see the Lord's telling him to go and love a woman, a little different than just marry, but to love her. And that even though he was kind to her, see in my line, that second line where it says a woman beloved of her friend, that means that the husband would love her as a friend, be kind to her, even though that she was loved, even though he was kind to her, even though that he was a good husband to her, she would yet be an adulteress. She would yet seek after others in spite of how good he was to her. And why was the Lord telling Hosea to do this? To show us, to show the nation of Israel, the relationship between the Lord and those people, the nation of Israel. To show the love the Lord had toward his people in spite of who they were. Again, we spent a lot of time, and I hope we continue to do, and I hope I continue to do, hope you continue to do, just to, in our own minds, think about just that part of there in verse 1, the fact that the Lord loved the people. He loved me knowing what I was. What a thought. I mean, we talked about last week, the manna. We've talked about the past weeks, the joy. Do we just think about the Lord loves us in spite of who we are? What is something to chew on? The Lord did not fall in love with the people, the nation of Israel, and then was surprised later on how they would act or what they would do. The Lord loved and picked this nation when he called Abram, knowing full and well what adulterous people they would be. Yet he still chose to love them. He loved them full and well, knowing of the groanings, days, if not moments after he led them out of Egypt, what they would utter. And yet he loved them. And I just can't help but get over what a miracle that God would love any of us. We talked about last week, oftentimes that you engage in a relationship with your spouse, you love them with the hope that they will be the best husband or wife to you ever had, and there will be no hint of harm or bad times. Again, we take the vow for better or for worse, and we always think of the better. But God knew the worst and still loved us. What a miracle. It's something to chew on. Looking at verse 1 a little bit even more, I know we focused a lot of that last week, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't know how we could ever belabor it because it's such a beautiful thing to think of. But we see again the love that Hosea is to show to his wife does not stop when she becomes an adulterous woman. He does not say, love her until she betrays you and then cast her away. Love her until she betrays you and then forsake the marriage. Love her until she betrays you and then stone her, kill her. what times where it could have been back then. I don't see it. The Lord does not tell Hosea to stop loving her once she does this. Hosea is told to be a loving husband, a friendly husband. You know, you should be the best friend of your spouse. And I think that's why the Lord allowed the King James translators to use that word friend there. It's not just a romantic relationship that he's talking about, but it's that bond, that common, that friend that you have, that confidant you have in your spouse that, man, when everyone else is against you, hopefully home is a place where you can be fortified. Again, he's supposed to be that regardless of what this adulterous woman does. Even though where she fails her duties, where she changes, where she doesn't live up to what she's supposed to do, Hosea, the husband, is not going to change. And again, another picture of the Lord and his people. Aren't you glad today that despite the great wickedness and sin that you and I commit each day, the love of the Lord toward us through Jesus doesn't? Because, boy, we deserve to be stoned, to be cast away, to be divorced, to be left to our own. But I was looking at that again. That love is just it's a present verb. Love her, not loved, not love till, not love when, just love. And again, I can't help but think, how often can I hold bitterness in my heart towards someone who does me wrong? But the Lord loved me knowing what I'd be and continues to do each day. We can't lose that love. I know I'm sure thankful I can't. You know, also, if you look here in chapter 3, verse 1, Brother Derek sent out a message to us men, I believe Friday morning, about Judges chapter 14, verse 2 and 3. And it says, Samson, he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath. Brother Derek was really talking about being convicted on the word I have seen. And then I was looking here in verse 1 of chapter 3, and what do we see here at the end of Israel's struggles? He says, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look. He talked about the seeing. He talked about the eyes, the struggle we have when we don't control our eyes. We don't control what we're focused on, right? Samson saw a woman. He looked upon a woman in Timnath that was not of God's people. It was not of the nation of Israel. And he looked upon her, and it caused him great strife. And we see here that the nation of Israel, God uses that word, they look to other gods. And I thought of Brother Derek's burden to share that with us. And we see here the Lord talking about the struggles of Israel and their adulterous ways. And we see that it starts with, they look after the other gods. They look to them. We can see the great sin that can come from when our eyes are not when our eyes and our focus is not on God and the things in his word, but when it's on the lust of our own heart, our own desires, and what can come. Because as we know, God is a faithful husband. Jesus Christ is a faithful husband to his church. But yet how often do his churches go away? We look at close enough. We look at other things. We look at this, that, and the other. We look at this world. I know I do. But the husband never failed. And you know, even when we look at the world, when we fail God or fail Jesus as a church, he still loves us. Because he's told to love, to be a friendly husband. What a blessing. I know I'm sure thankful for it, because I know I don't deserve it. So as we wrap up verse 1, and again, there's a lot there. I pray, I almost wet your whistle a little to where you want to study it out more and think about it more. But if we wrap up verse 1, we see here again that this is the setting of the rest of the chapter, right? That you're told to love this woman. Even though you're good to her, she's going to forsake you because she's looking to these other gods. Nation of Israel's looking to these other gods. She's looking to these flagons of wine. So now we see verse 2. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver and for a homer of barley and a half homer of barley. So as we start in verse 2, I want to reference back again to verse 1. But as we see here in verse 1, on my first line, after that comma where the Lord said unto me, then said the Lord unto me, there's a comma. What's that next word? It is a call to action. Go. Hosea is being told to go, to do. Arise, as we did last year. There is a call to action. What do we start off with in verse 2? So I bought her. God said to do it, so I did it. Obedience. I missed that when I've read it over and over. But we see that there's a call to action. Hosea, go do this. Verse 2, Hosea, I'm almost like recording his own actions. So I bought her. You know, it's almost simple. He said to do it, so I did it. As parents, we'd love that reality, wouldn't we? Told my kid to go, so they did. Doesn't happen often. And we look at our kids and it gets frustrated. Then if we take a step back, look in that mirror, that's us and God. How often does God tell us to go, to do, to be about his business? But often my response is, so I argued with God. So I presented my case and what I wanted. Not so I did. So I listened. So I went. Simple. It's not, obedience is not, it's a beautiful thing. It's a rare thing, but it's not extravagant to the part where you have to be explained it and, you know, have a degree here and a doctorate there to understand obedience. Just like common sense, right? Common sense isn't so common, but it's simple. It's common. He's told to go and love this woman. There's an action required from Hosea to go and do this thing the Lord has instructed. And in verse 2, we see that Hosea goes and does that thing. Simple. It's a small thing that you can read over, but what a beautiful thing of obedience. Something we looked at in Joshua, something we looked at in Judges, and we see even here now with Hosea. He does not argue or contend with the Lord on how unfair this is, because it is. If you think about it, for the husband, it's quite unfair to marry a woman knowing that she's going to forsake you. If we look in our fleshly eyes, how much this will hurt him. Hurt comes with betrayal. Marriage, relationships, friendships, brother and sister churches. We see it all the time. It hurts us, again, to the point where we can't even extend a hand of fellowship or a holy kiss, as we learned about on Wednesday. But we can't even be kind to each other. And I'm not pointing, I know I struggle with this. Or he doesn't even ask the Lord why. There's not even a why. Hosea, I want you to go do this. There's no, so I asked the Lord why. Moses did all of those. Well, they won't listen to me. Well, I can't talk well. Well, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've done. And again, the nation of Israel looks to Moses as this high figure, this high man in their faith, but yet he argued and contended with God. But Hosea, a prophet, a minor prophet as it's shared here, is told to do something and just goes. What a blessing to see. But what a conviction to see of how often do you and I complain to God about the tough lot that he has called us to walk or to have or to manage. The tough things that we have to go through in our life. How often do you and I complain? How often do we go to prayer and cry out, Lord, how tough this is for the current path you have us walking in but then we see here yet a man being told to love a woman who will not be faithful to him, that will hurt him, that will hurt his pride, that will hurt his heart, that will hurt his feelings. Because he's not told to just be with her. You know, if you could separate the emotion of love, the choice of love, for just being with her, that it might make it a little easier. But he's told to love her. It's a verb, it's an action, it's a choice. And there's no complaining. There's no contending. There's no justifying. There's no fighting. So I did it. Just obedience. What a lesson that I can take from that. Willful obedience. That's what God wants. The memory verse for our kids in the little class. It's better to obey than sacrifice. Behold, it is better to obey than sacrifice. You know why Hosea can obey? You know why Hosea can be obedient? Because Hosea understands his role with the Lord. He understands his position. How often, I don't know about you all, but right now in our home, how often are we talking about the pecking order of a home? Right? It's God, mom and dad, and then you all. We have to say that a lot because our kids, Allie and I are talking. Kids come up, Dad, Mom, Dad, Mom, Dad. Hey, we're talking. We love you all, but I love Mama more. I need to talk to Mom. And then we'll get to you, right? Hey, I love you, but I'm going to make sure Mom's taken care of, and then I'm going to get to you. We talk about the pecking order a lot in our home. Hosea understands it. So why can Hosea be willfully obedient? It's because he understands it. All right, Lord, my role is to serve you. My role is not to question you. I'm the clay. You're the potter. So he can be obedient. Yes, sir. I'll do it. Why do we contend with the Lord? Why do we fight with him? Why do I? I forget my role. Lord, I'm just supposed to be obedient. I'm supposed to listen. I believe also, even though we don't get to it in the New Testament, even though this is not recorded in the New Testament yet at the time of Hosea, but I believe he understands Romans 8:28. Lord, whatever lot you have for me, no matter what my fleshly eyes think of it, it's far better for me to take this than to do my own thing. It's far better for me to just listen to you than to try to strum up my plan of what would make sense. It's far better for me to do what pleases you, Lord, than what pleases me. That's why Hosea can do it. When we struggle with obedience, when we struggle with being willfully obedient, it's because we forget our role. And we trust more in what could happen than we trust more in who holds tomorrow. We trust more in what might consequences come as opposed to trusting in God who told us to go. That's really what it is. More faith in what could happen than more faith in who's telling us to go. But what a beautiful thing there to see just obedience. It's such a small little, so I bought, so I did it, right? My boss told me to do it, so I did it. But not a big deal. Well, sadly in our life, for me, willful, simple, direct, immediate obedience is a big deal. I don't do it often enough. We also see here in verse 2 that there is a physical price, a financial price to pay for Hosea to follow the Lord and to love this woman. He had to purchase her unto him. It was custom for men of these days to buy their wives unto themselves. If you turn to Genesis 29 real quick, I know we all know these, but we talk about being prepared on Wednesday nights. It's good to know where they are in the Bible, as opposed to just saying, well, yeah, it's in there somewhere, which I know I do too often. But Genesis 29, verse 18, we'll look at just 3 accounts of men buying their brides into themselves. But Genesis 29, verse 18, and Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. So we see here that Jacob bought Rachel by serving her father 7 years. But then also, after that 7 years, we know what happens, that Laban says, I'll give you Rachel. Well, then they says, well, it's not custom for the younger to be married before the older. So he gives his older daughter, and then Jacob has to work another 7 years. We get down to verse 27 and through 30 to finally get Rachel. So Jacob pays 14 years of his life, 14 years of wages to buy Rachel unto him. Turn to 1 Samuel. This one's a little more graphic, but 1 Samuel chapter 18. First Samuel chapter 18, verse 24, we see here that David bought his wife, Michal. I'm not for sure exactly how to pronounce it, Michal, but it's Saul's daughter, for 1,000 or for 100. He ended up paying 200, but 100 foreskin of the Philistines. So in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 24, and the servants of Saul told him being David, saying, on this manner spake David. And the servants of Saul told him, telling Saul what David said, saying, on this manner spake David. And Saul said, thus shall ye say to David, the king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So he was promising his daughter, hey, if you go and get 100 foreskins of these men, I'll let you marry my daughter, hoping that the Philistines would kill him in this pursuit. They did not. Verse 27, wherefore David arose and went, and he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins and gave them in full tale to the king. So, interesting price, but that's what he asked for, and that's what David ended up doing. He had to give some effort, some price for his wife. And then lastly, hopefully one we're all thankful for, turn to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Jesus, the Son, Jesus bought his bride with himself. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and got home from work and put his feet up and told her what to do. And sat home and told her to take care of all the duties and do nothing. No. And worked for 8 hours so he could do whatever he wanted. Now it says, husband, love your wife, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Jesus laid down his life for this church. The most pure, beautiful thing God had was paid. Christ paid his life for his church. So it's custom in this Jewish culture for men to work, to pay some kind of dowry or some kind of effort to have their bride endowed to them by their father. It almost makes you think now of like an engagement ring, right? You symbolize that you want to marry somebody by purchasing something and giving it to that spouse, giving it to your partner. Now, a little different, you don't give it to the father, but there's some kind of exchange of, I want you to be mine, so here's a token of that, right? Whether it's, we're not going to go there. But whether it's some kind of token, there's a token of, I want you to be mine. So we see the amount paid. If we go back to our text, Hosea chapter 3, verse 2. We see the amount that Hosea paid, 15 shekels of silver and 1.5 homers of barley. Really interesting here, and something that book that Brother Austin gave me just helped me really understand, I guess, and hopefully explain more. But let's look at that 15 pieces of silver. So the book I read, it's very common to say that if you see pieces, it's often referred to just to be shekels. That's kind of, if you see the word pieces in here, it can be also translated as shekels. So 15 shekels of silver, we hear that a lot with a little foreshadowing, but what Jesus was purchased for, right? 30 shekels of silver. So if we go to Exodus 21, verse 32, I remember in our reading, but Exodus 21, verse 32, we see here that these are laws regarding oxen in this part of Exodus, or ox. So Exodus 21, verse 32 says, if the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto the master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. So we see here God is telling the people, as they set up their nation, how to make it right if an ox pushes over. I would imagine that means probably harm. So if they were to harm a maidservant or a manservant that somebody else owned or somebody else had in their control. And we see that if that was to happen, in order to make up the price for a servant, it was 30 shekels of silver. But if we go back to our text, we see that Hosea is told to pay for his wife, which would you think would mean more than a servant, 15 shekels. Again, you should much more value your wife over a maid or manservant. But this amount here that the Lord has told Hosea to do, that Hosea goes and buys, I believe shows us the lowly state the nation of Israel is in. A slave costs 30. A servant costs 30. Your wife, the adulterous woman, costs 15. So you're telling me there's more value on the slave, the servant, than there is on this adulterous woman, the nation of Israel. Again, you would think your wife is much more valuable to you than a servant, correct? You even think about when Potiphar, when his wife comes to him and says, Joseph tried to lay with me. Look here. And Joseph says, I did no such thing. Who did he value, whose opinion over whose? He valued his wife's opinion over his servant. Even though that servant made him a lot of money, he cast him into jail. Didn't think twice about it when we don't read. But we see here that a manservant or a maidservant is going to cost you 30 shekels, 30 pieces of silver to make right. But this adulterous woman, so ugly and nasty in her sin, so low down, the nation of Israel, so low down in their pursuit of other gods, their treacherous behavior to the Lord, worth just 15, worth half of a servant. This value is associated with the adulterous woman, I believe, to show Israel their lowly estate that sin has brought them to. The children of Israel depicted by this adulterous woman were worth half of what a slave or a servant would cost. Once, or not once, they still are, but the inheritance of God, the chosen people loved by God, the ones that walked hand in hand with God. God led them out of Egypt, right? Through the Red Sea, dry ground, a cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. They were right there with the Lord. Now they are brought down to just 15 shekels of silver. Due to their sin, they were worth now half of what a servant would cost. Again, if you look at Matthew 27:9, don't turn there, but just for notes, we see there that Christ was humbled himself to be like a servant, and he was only worth 30 shekels of silver to Judas, the Jews, and the Romans. Now, obviously, he's worth a lot more than that. But Christ humbled himself to be sold no more than the price of a servant. But here the nation of Israel, again, went for half of that. Half. You're buying your wife for half of what you'd pay for a servant. Sin had tarnished their worth. It's the same with you and I. If we're not living for the Lord, if we're not walking as we should, if we're not focused on what we should be, if we're not in our Bible serving him, what are we doing for the Lord? We have no worth for him there. And we see that's what the nation of Israel has been accompanied down to. Half the price of a servant. We see also he paid a 1.5 homers of barley. In the little bit of study I could, I believe a homer of barley is around 10 bushels of barley of what we would consider kind of today in our measurement of crops. So 15 bushels of barley and 15 shekels of silver is what Hosea purchased his wife for. Barley again signifies the worth of the adulterous woman to the nation of Israel. It was a food that was usually grown to give to animals. You grew it so you could throw it to your livestock and they could take care of it, right? A lot of people, we don't give our animals the best of the best. Oftentimes they get little pellets of dog food that's been heated up and dried so much and you just let them eat and, or they get the scraps off your plate or the stuff you don't want to necessarily partake of from the dinner table, from the cut of meat. It was also a food for the poor, right? Oftentimes you would leave it on the outskirts of your crop so the poor could come in and take some of it and at least have some substance, but it wasn't this enriched special wheat or flour. If you go to the grocery store, what caught my eye, as you can tell with my belly, was pizza flour. They had this like 00 pizza flour, and it was supposed to be really well, it's supposed to be, my wife explained it well, but it was supposed to be this really fine pizza flour that would make hopefully a better tasting crust than maybe your greater value on clearance, super processed flour that you would make. Both get the job done, you both get to eat, but there's one that hopefully would bring a better taste. Like if you go to Max's and get a pizza, it's like getting saltines with a little bit of ketchup on it, right? So this barley was poor food. It was not anything that was really worth a value. It was not something like, oh man, I'm getting barley. It was like, okay, well, this is what we got barley in the fridge, so let's go ahead and eat that to get us through to the next paycheck. It was last resort. But again, we can see here the price that was paid for the adulterous woman in the nation of Israel was not some great price. It was not, to me, it wasn't anything you would think of 14 years of your life given for someone you love. 14 years of your life. There's not many in here with kids older than 14. Imagine giving all that time up of the time you've had with your child for your wife. And you would do that for someone you love, right? It'd be easy to do. There was a great price for that. And I believe also because Laban, one, he could get free labor, but two, I think he knew the value of his daughter had, especially to this man. You think about the price given that David paid. 200 men killed. That's great effort. That's great danger. You put your life on the line, literally going to battle the Philistines, your enemy. What the plan was, the man who asked for it, was that you would die. You would perish by it. There was great risk in that. And then obviously the Lord. 33 years or 32 and a half, 33 and a half, I can't remember exactly, but around that time, right, the Lord lived a perfect life. He was sinless, but he was hated. He owned all creation, but he was poor. And yet he was killed by his friends, the one he came to save. He paid a great price for his bride. But Hosea, 15 shekels of silver and 15 bushels of your averagest barley. We see the sin of Israel had left them in this condition where their worth was brought down to this. And you would say, not much. Again, we talked about it a little bit, but we see when we are stuck in sin, stuck looking and loving at other gods or other things our flesh wants, we don't present much value, if any at all, to the Lord. We're not living to honor and glorify him in that state. You can't. And that's what we were bought to do. If you turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 20. For ye are bought with a price. What was that price? The life of Jesus. Jesus' blood. Didn't spill it, wasn't taken out, wasn't ripped out of his body. He shed it. Exactly the right amount to the drop. For you are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. That's a conversation I have a lot, and you all probably know this. I'm not trying to teach you something new. I'm not smart enough to even do that, nor hopefully if I ever said that, you'd have me step down. But that when we witness to people, right, and there's certain things that I think all of us have that are just things that maybe fire us up a little bit or that we're really convicted on. But if someone's lost, it's hard for them to ever understand. That's a conversation my wife and I have had with somebody about the topic of abortion. And they were lost and they were trying to contend why abortion was right or wrong, why the government should say or not. And I was like, until you understand that, until the Lord saves you, you understand that you're not your own, you're bought with a price. You won't understand the submission of us doing what the Lord has told us to do, regardless of how we feel, like Hosea is doing here. We were bought with a price. So if we're bought with a price, we're not our own. And then we have something to do to serve that master. But how often do we want to do whatever we want to do? How often are we the adulterous woman looking after the gods, loving flagons of wine, and not the Lord? Back to our text. See here in verse 3, when Hosea buys Gomer for his wife, he tells her, we'll read verse 3, it says, "And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, thou shalt not be for another man, so will I also be for thee." When Hosea buys Gomer, his wife, he tells her that she will abide with him many days. She'll quit doing this, quit playing the harlot, quit being for any man, but also he will be for her. This abide with him there's a passage in the Old Testament that references this as well, something very similar. If you turn to Deuteronomy chapter 21. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10. Deuteronomy 21, verse 10 says, "When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies," and again, we have to remember, this is written to the nation of Israel. "So when thou goest forth to the war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home in thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails," means cut them, tend to them, hygiene. "And she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and she shall remain in thy house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife." So this is a similar passage here. I think we can draw some parallels from this. So we see in this passage that if the nation of Israel were to go to war, and obviously have victory in that war, and to take some of the people back captive, and if there was a woman there that a single man saw and liked and had a desire to marry her, you didn't just marry her right away. "Hey, you're pretty. Boom. All right, you're mine. We're going to go be husband and wife and do everything that according to that." No, the Lord tells us there's a process, because she's a stranger. She is committed. She has been captive before, right? She's been under a foreign rule. Well, that's very similar for what we're seeing with Hosea. The adulterous woman was captive. By who? Sin, the devil. They were captive in their wicked living. They were captive in their adulterous ways. They were captive by these other gods, these flagons of wine. They were under captivity. They were under a different rule. Now, obviously, ultimately under the Lord's rule, but the Lord was allowing them to be under this rule. Again, kind of like what parents do a lot, I can imagine with the Lord. All right, if that's what you want, go ahead and enjoy that. Enjoy those fruits of that decision. If you want to look at other gods and love flagons of wine, okay, then go enjoy them. Right? So they were under this captivity. So if you were to marry her, what did you have to do? Well, it says there in verse 12, you need to shave her head. You need to pare her nails, which is to take some kind of hygiene. They talk a lot about that their nails would be long, maybe painted in certain ways to show their worship to whatever deity that nation served, right? Or they just might be plain disgusting. Who knows? It might have just been stuff under there they did to prepare meals to false gods. Whatever it may be, there's a signification of shaving the head, paring the nails, and taking off the clothes of captivity to show that you are leaving that past life. And that if you were going to be my bride, you were going to tote off that past life and over time prove yourself to then be ready to serve the Lord with me, to ready to be under my household, right? My leadership. And again, you didn't just do that in a day and then marry her and take her back to your tent. This indicates that just because you see a pretty woman you want to marry, you don't just take her the same day to be your bride. No, you went through these steps, right? To help her shed her foreign identity. And we even see here in 13 to mourn her mother and her father, right? She's taken away from home. She's not going to go back there and live just as she did and be your bride, being the nation of Israel. She is being taken off. She's being purged of her former identity, changing her attire. And then after that abiding, right? After that time of her hair growing back, her nails being clean, her clothes being different, her mourning being different over her mom and dad. Now you can take her. Now you can come unto her. And I believe this is what we're shown in Hosea. When Hosea buys his wife, he made her abide many days. They did not immediately interact in normal marriage activities or settings. He made her abide for many days. There was a proving process, a purification process for Gomer to take off her old captivity the old things that she was doing, serving these other gods, serving these other lovers, as we read in verse, I think, chapter 2, right? They were between her breasts. She sought them. She sought after them. She loves flagons of wine, however you pronounce it. And when Homer bought her back, he said, all right, you're going to abide with me. We're going to purify. We're going to put off that old behavior. You're going to abide with me for some days. You're going to be done with this other activity. You're done playing the harlot. You're done chasing after others. You're done being for other men. You're only going to be for me. But also, so will I. She was to abide with Hosea to show that she was done playing the harlot, to show that she was not going to be for any other man. She would only be for Hosea. And Hosea in that time too would show her, I'm only going to be here for you. You know, how often is this such a picture of the nation of Israel, especially when we read through the book of Judges? But how often has Israel, in their history, been overtaken by sin, overtaken by whatever false god they were serving, often Baal? And when that oppression becomes too great, when they realize what they had with the Lord, they cry out to God, right? Especially in Judges, Lord, please send someone to deliver us. The Lord listens. He's merciful. He sends a deliverer. They're delivered. Moments later, ooh, look at this other god, Baal. Ooh, look at this other called Balaam. And they're right back to that sinful nature. They're right back to what got them in that position. And sadly, we can all look at ourselves and we do the same. I remember Brother Tyler Rouse has got up here many times and he's talked about too, like when you have that prayer, Lord, I'll never do this again. Just please help me. And then often it's that day, the next week, we're saying that same prayer. Lord, help me. I'll never do it again this time. Right? With church discipline, with someone coming up professing to be saved, there needs to be a time of abiding. Okay, you were of the former captivity of the devil, under the sin of lust in your flesh. Let's abide. Let's prove it. And if someone's truly saved, they should be eager to do that. Yes, sir. Yes, church, I'll be glad. Yes, I'll be glad to. I want to. And that's a great way here in this time, I think, when the Lord's talking about this strange woman in the battle, and also here with Hosea. Okay, if you say you're ready to do this, if you want this mercy from me, all right, let's see it. Let's abide with me. Show me you're done playing the harlot. Show me you're done being for other men. Just like I want to show you that I'm here for you. Yeah, it doesn't say that she's going to sleep in the chicken coop. I believe he's still going to take care of her. But there's certain beautiful things about marriage that are probably going to have to wait a little bit when that time is abiding for proving. But again, how often does Israel do this? How often do we do this? We see it all throughout the Old Testament. The Lord, I believe, wants to bring the nation of Israel, the adulterous woman here in our text, to a point where their heart is truly broken of that sin. It's truly broken of that cycle of deliverance, backsliding, deliverance, backsliding, deliverance, backsliding. He wants to break them to where they'll no longer go after other gods. He wants that perfect unity, that beautiful part of marriage where it's just you two and the Lord. They will no longer go after other men, no longer go after the lust of their flesh, the lust of their eyes, what they're looking upon, and they will be a faithful people to him. You know, even in Jewish culture, when I was reading that book, it says, in Jewish culture, when they would wash a filthy rag, they would let it soak a great while in that soapy water. It wasn't just a doom, doom, all right, let's use it. They would put it in that water, wherever they would wash it, they'd wash it. They'd soak it. I'm sure it'd probably come back, wash it again, soak it. Come back, wash it again, soak it. Talks about they would do that over many frosts of the night, right? Many nights it would soak in that water to truly cleanse itself. That rag would abide in the cleansing water. And here, in verse 3, Gomer, the nation of Israel, needs to abide with the Lord many days, abide with the husband, to show that old life, that old captivity is gone. I want to be new. I don't ever want to do that again. I want to be just for you. And what a blessing that Gomer, the nation of Israel, has Hosea, the Lord, on the other side saying, and so I will be for you. In spite of all they did. Again, you don't see Gomer here or Hosea saying, you're going to abide here. You're going to prove to me this, that, and the other. You're going to buy me this gift. You're going to do this for me. You're going to wash my feet. You're going to do all these things for me. You're going to show me all these things. I want you to quit being the harlot. I want you to quit being for somebody else. I just want you for me. There's even mercy in that. And yet I can't escape the thought of, I can't even show mercy to somebody that's offended me once. And look at the mercy the Lord shows. And he'd be the one justified to give judgment. I'm not. We'll wrap up there for time's sake, but in verse 4 we get into 6 withouts that the nation of Israel goes without. 2 of them kind of deal more with the civil life, a king and a prince. A prince can often be translated as like a judge or a ruler, so someone just to kind of see over matters. A king, right, to protect them, to lead them. And then 4 things that deal more with their spiritual life, without a sacrifice, an image, an ephod, and teraphim. Again, one of the happiest and most blessed nations. Now, due to their sin, go without these 6 things. That's us. That's us, friend, brother and sister in Christ. Lord saves you, happiest you could be. You're walking with the Lord, happiest you can be. There is no peace like when you walk with the Lord. But how often do we take it for granted? Do we give it up? When we look at other gods, we look at other things. That's all I have. Brother Keith.